Hello there, welcome to Curious Spirits. I'm Thomas, and my goal is to discover, taste, and experience all sorts of different spirits and share my experiences with you. Today, we're going to be tasting 3 different single cask bottlings from Plantation Rum. Now, Plantation Rum is a French company who both owns a distillery in Barbados, the West Indies Rum Distillery, but they also buy casks and buy rum from distilleries all over the world. Then they bottle them, sometimes they blend them, sometimes they bottle them into single casks or limited releases. Now, Plantation Rum is the more well-known brand at the moment, but they have changed their name to Plantation. So please be aware, if you see bottles of Plantation on the shelves, it's the same company that is behind it. The 3 bottles that I'm going to be tasting today have all been bottled under the old Plantation banner. All 3 bottles we're going to be talking about are single casks, bottled for the Dutch market, and I've been able to acquire some samples of them. So these will not be the most in-depth tasting notes. These are just going to be my impressions of these rums. We're going to start out with one where I can't find that much information about it. It's an 8-year-old rum from Barbados, although the distillery is not disclosed. I've been able to find that it has matured for 5 years in a bourbon cask in the tropics, so we can assume in Barbados. Then it has been transferred to a Ferrand cask, so Plantation Rum also owns Maison Ferrand Cognac, and most, if not all, of their rums do have some sort of maturation on cognac casks. So 5 years in bourbon, 1 year on a cognac cask, and then a further finish of 2 years in an export cask. It's been bottled, let me see, at 46.8% ABV. So looking at the color, it's indeed, it has a sort of a reddish orange hue to it, probably from the port cask, of course. And what's also maybe important to know is that Plantation will sometimes add a little bit of sugar, a little bit of dosage, as they call it, to their rums. Now, you can be a fan of that, you can hate that, that is whatever you decide. But what is important is that if they do add any sugar to their rums, they mention it on the bottle itself. Unfortunately, I only have a sample here, and I wasn't able to find a lot of details about this specific bottling online, so I'm unsure how much, if any, dosage has been added to it. But I think, considering that it's been in a cognac cask, considering that it's been in a port cask, it's gonna have some inherent sweetness nonetheless. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm being disturbed here in my tasting session, so let me just take a quick intermission to give some attention to our cat here. Okay, that was that. So as I said before, it's got a slight reddish hue to it. Let's go for the nose. For me, this is quite a typical Barbados nose, in the sense that I get a lot of vanilla, some cinnamon, a little bit of cardamom. That vanilla butterscotch caramel is definitely coming through. And then there is also a hint of like cherries and other types of like berries, maybe sweet raspberries on there as well, coming from the port cask mainly, I believe. On the palate, it's a very gentle arrival, even though it's 46 and something percent. It arrives very gently, and most of the flavor is definitely coming from those cognac and those port casks. So it's full of red fruits, cherries, a little bit of plum, a hint of licorice in there. And then as those flavors kind of subside, the secondary and tertiary flavors, those are then the vanillas, the caramels, the butterscotch that you get from the typical Barbados rum. Trying not to steer this into a specific distillery, although I believe that this might be from Foursquare. One of the things that I've noticed about plantation rum is that they don't tend to bottle for like the very extreme hardcore enthusiast, which also means that for me, a lot of their rums sometimes tend to be, I'm not going to say too sweet, but maybe a little bit too simple. For me, this one is a very well balanced. It's sweet because of the port, but you know, as it says on the label, it's got a port influence. I want to taste that port then. But it's very, very balanced. And what's very noticeable here is it has quite a long finish. I can still taste it on my palate. This is one that I like pretty much. This is a great rum. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to this, and I'll come back to it later, just to see how it evolves with that addition of some water. Now I'm gonna go for the second sample that I have here, and this one is a single cask from Trinidad, distilled in 2008 and bottled at 49.5% ABV. So Trinidad, they used to have a couple of distilleries there. There was 10 Cane Distillery, which was quite shortly lived. There was obviously the now defunct and very well-known and sought-after Coroni Distillery. And so obviously the only active distillery on the island is TDL, Trinidad Distillers Limited, who's probably most well-known for their Angostura bitters. And they also release rum under the Angostura brand. In my opinion, most of those rums are made for cocktails, but I do have some Trinidad Distillers Limited rums bottled as single casks in my own collection that I find are absolutely outstanding rums. Now, for this one in particular, I did a little bit of digging to find some more information on it, and I did find some more information on it on the side of what's now called as Plantation themselves. So it has been fermented for about 3 to 4 days, distilled in a 4-column still in 2008, and it has 11 years aging in bourbon casks, 1 year in those same Ferrand casks that I mentioned earlier, which are the cognac casks, and then it has a 1-year finish in a Chablis cask. Now, Chablis is a wine from Chardonnay, which is quite dry and chalky. They also mentioned some geeky facts on their site. So it has volatile substances, 126. It doesn't have any mention of unit sizes. Esters, 41. I'm going to assume this is going to be grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol. Esters, 41. Again, no mention of unit, but I'm going to assume this is grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol. And it's also stated that this has a dosage of 10 grams per liter, so there might be a little bit of sugar added here, and it's between 0 and 0.1% cane sugar caramel added, so this is E150A. On the nose, very different from the Barbados that we had before. I've decided to try these in order of ABV. So this is a little bit higher. This is why I'm tasting it second. And it's very delicate, very almost flowery. Summer fruit salad. Some green apple, some unripe pear in there. And this might either be just because of I know that there's Chablis cask in here, but it does have a chalky, minerally nose to it as well. Yeah, those apples and that summer fruit salad really stands out. It's maybe a little bit more shy on the nose than the Barbados was. But it's a very nice start to this. Let's try it. Oh, this is dry. This is bone dry. Arrival is again quite gentle, but extremely dry, chalky. I'm getting some hints of pineapple, but it's just on the verge of being ripe. It's not quite ripe pineapple in there. Some like dried banana. And that flowery floral texture is in there as well. Now the apple is coming through. On the back end, I'm getting some hints of white tea. And then chalk, a little bit of tannins, a bit of oak bitterness on the end. It's a medium long finish. It's not quite as long and not as large and bombastic as the port finished Barbados was. But it's a very interesting finish in its own right. And again here, which is something again that Plantation does, and you can love it, you can hate it, that's your own choice, but the finish that they use, so the Chablis cask, is really shining through here. I think it's with the Barbados. I can see it's got some hints that are targeting to me towards the typical Barbados rum. TDL for me is a much more difficult distillery to kind of pick out in a tasting, because they have a little bit less specific character, also because they have so many different possible combinations that they can do in distilling that it doesn't tend to lean one way or the other, and it's really about experimenting with those. It's getting more fruity on the nose as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some water to this as well. And we are going to come back to it. Last but not least on the sample here is a Jamaican rum, distilled in 2012, bottled at 50.8%. I've been able to find a little bit of extra information on that one as well, again on the Plantation website. So this was part of the Single Casks 2023 limited releases. And this has been distilled at the Clarendon Distillery in Jamaica. It's got a fermentation of 1 week, and it's been distilled in both pot and column stills. It spent 5 years in the tropic in bourbon casks, another 5 years in France in cognac casks, and then a finish of 1 year in a Calvados cask. Now they didn't forget the measurements. Volatile substances, 143 grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol and 49 grams of esters per hectoliter of pure alcohol. This one has no dosage. Instead of dosage, they use browning here, and then no sugar caramel added. So, as I said, Plantation has gone through a name change from Plantation to Plantaray. They've launched their new site, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and it's still like under construction. There's quite a bit of mistakes if you really dig into it. But again, they offer the details both on their webpage, and I know that they have all of those details on the front and back label of the bottle. So no complaints from me here. So two things of note before I try this. First of all, Clarendon Distillery is not one of like the most out there, most well-known Jamaican distilleries. I think if people rave about Jamaican rum nowadays, it's going to be about Hamden, it's going to be about Worthy Park. Clarendon is kind of like more of this mass production distillery. And since this has 49 grams of esters, I'm not expecting a ton of Jamaican funk in here. Second thing I want to talk about is the Calvados cask. So I think Calvados finishes can be very, very interesting, both in rum and in whiskey, because they tend to add that sweet apple flavor. And this could be like regular apple, this could be more of a sour green apple, or more of a rich apple stew or apple compote. When they work, they can work absolutely beautifully. I have, for instance, this is a whiskey then, but I have a Deanston that was finished in Calvados casks, which is absolutely sublime. But I've also found from other Calvados influenced spirits in the past that it sometimes can be difficult to get the right balance. Either it could be too appley, or the Calvados could be drowned out entirely. So let's see what we have here to work with. It's Jamaica. It's fruity. I'm getting passion fruit. I'm getting mango. I'm getting banana. There's maybe just a hint of overripe banana in there as well, but it's not that. So it does have a little bit of Jamaican funk, but it's not as in-your-face funk as like the high ester monsters like Hamden 8-year-olds, for instance. And yes, there is some. I can sort of see that the apple influence is in there. This is actually a very, very nice nose. And most of all, it's a very balanced nose, because if I'm smelling it now, I'm also getting a little bit of plums and raisins that I would assume come from the cognac casks. Okay, this has raised my expectations. Let's try it. Very fresh. A little bit of mint. Again, the banana, most definitely. Apples, both red and green apples, most definitely. I'm getting hints of cashew nuts, which is interesting. And on the finish, there's some lime zest particularly. That's quite. It's not strong, but it's lingering quite long, and it really wants me to go for a second sip, which is a good showing here. Apple compote as well. A little bit of red grapes. A hint of plums. What I like about this, and I'm not the biggest fan of plantation rum. I'm going to be very outright in that. But I think this is one of the better offerings that I've had of them. And to be very fair, all three of these rums that I've tasting here are good to very good. And I think they all have their raison d'être, their reason of existing. The finishes that they have are all well done. They're all very balanced. And what's more is, as a rum geek, rum nerd, rum aficionado, these are good rums. I'm having fun with these. But at the same time, I feel like they are quite approachable rums, which is a very difficult balance to strike. I think it's easier to strike that balance in whiskey rather than in rum. So I've added a little bit of water to that Jamaican as well, just to see what it does. What I'm going to do now is just revisit all three of them again, see if anything specific has changed in their character. Since I'm still getting the Jamaican on the palate, I'm going to take some water here. Now, this is the Barbados once again. I feel like the nose has opened up a little bit more. The prunes are still there, but there's also sort of a chocolatey note, fresh walnuts, like a walnut that's fresh from the tree, not something that's been store-bought and been in the store for months on end. Milk chocolate, hint of cacao. On the palate, I think it's become even a little bit more sweet, on the verge of being winey, but it's still balancing the rum and the wine nicely. Still a very, very long finish. This is an excellent rum, and I feel like, especially rum from Barbados, is being hailed online as like a gateway rum, right? And I feel like that's an important distinction, because a lot of rum media and rum coverage online, especially on YouTube, is US based, which is obviously perfectly fine. But the US drinker, the average American drinker, is probably going to be coming from bourbon, which is very strong and, dare I say, a little bit one-dimensional in flavor, with, you know, those honey, vanilla, and oak notes. And a lot of people are pointing towards Barbados as those same kind of characteristics are in there as well. And for me personally, they're often a little bit too overpowering. Here, it's actually balanced very, very nicely. Let's go through with the Trinidad on the Chablis cask. I'm getting a little bit less evolution on the nose here. It's still fruity on the nose, on the palate. It's still fruit, chalk, maybe gotten a little bit fruitier. I'm getting some green apple in there as well, a little bit of lime zest. Good rum. For me, the Barbados wins it out of these two. I think the Trinidad for me is a little bit too on the simple side of it. And then the Jamaica to finish things off. This has gotten admittedly the least time with water to really make a big difference or really air out. A wonderfully fruity nose, just as it was. But, you know, I've just been able to sniff in a whole lot without any alcohol burn, even though it's at 50%, reduced just a little bit because of the water, still well above 45. Beautifully balanced, tropical, light, but still with enough flavor to keep your attention on things. So, if I have to give a score to these rums, I'm gonna go with a tie. I'm going to give both the first one, the Barbados rum, and the third one, the Jamaican rum, an 86 out of 100. The Trinidad rum for me, although good, is a little bit on the simple side. I find that it's not jumping out of the glass as much. And it makes you look for flavor notes a lot more than the other two. So this one I'm going to go with an 81. The other two I'm going to go with an 86 out of 100. If you have any experience with these Plantation single casks, or maybe other single cask releases by Plantation or Plantaray, their first couple of single casks have come out in the last month or so, let me know down in the comments. Please consider clicking like and subscribe. It helps out with growing the channel and reaching more enthusiasts just like you. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next one. Cheers.